Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Mixing with Swigs. This is actually my second time recording because I am not smart, and we are doing a very interesting song, Memorial of the Fallen, which is from a game called Demon's Crest for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. And this cover comes from my bud Shake Elite, who's a great video game guitarist. You should definitely check him out. Links in the description as always. And one of the reasons why I specifically wanted to do this song, ignore me while I make unnecessary cuts, is because a lot of the song is orchestrated, and we have not done an orchestrated kind of song or like anything with synths. And I really think that it's important in these videos that I don't just cater to one type of music, you know? So without further ado, let's kind of go through the tracks that I received. I'm going to stop talking super in depth about the things that are in other guides just to make every video a little different and to not have to say the same thing 100 times. But yeah, so we got a drum thing. I'm loading it into my Superior Drummer sampler here. We also have a lot of lead guitars, just, distorted, a little bit of delay, but they're kind of all over. I personally don't like having this many, but that's kind of okay. One thing that I know from Shake Elite's kind of expecting is I'm gonna try not to like manipulate too much of the song, but I will have to show you a few things I kind of tweaked in the MIDI for the drums. We also have standard 2 guitars, rhythm guitars here, playing some crunchy chords. We have, I received a dry bass signal, which I copied over and put into 2 different effects to blend together. And we got a lot of synths here, so let's take a look. We have a choir, which is actually, it's over here, believe me, it's there. And we have a harpsichord, which is kind of a cool instrument. We have a keyboard played harp, which is where he actually performed the part. We have a magic box, which is just like a music box. Then we have 3 different types of organs, just kind of widens the space, plays different parts. We have some strings coming in from some sampled high quality strings, which is nice. Then we have a second choir that kind of plays at a different section with a kind of different, I think it might be different voices, like male instead of female. And then we have slam, which is just kind of like a sample pack for like a electronic music. I find those very nice to use in metal, but you got to be careful that you don't artificially, you don't want to ruin the song completely. But yeah, that's all the tracks, and I'm gonna show you what I did differently because again, I find that if you're dedicated and awesome enough to be watching any of this, but yeah, I don't want to make every video the exact same one, you know. So the first thing I did was we have like this snare marching thing going on, which is kind of cool. The first thing I want to do now that we've talked about the tracks is kind of go over what I did with the MIDI. One of the things I kind of mentioned with some of my previous ones, but I really want to go into depth to make this episode special, is talking about realistic drums. And Shake Elite's gotten much better, of course, at making drums. This is, with all respect due. But, oops. One thing I wanted to go over is how to make drums sound good if you feel like my drums are unrealistic or they're the same. So there's some really unique stuff he did here, and it kind of emulates a concert snare drum, like in the background of stuff. Think military or march. And originally there was a lot of kick drums here, but I took those out because it really didn't sound very good, and it didn't do any favors. But I smoothened up the buildup here. So now that you can hear that, let's look at these patterns. Originally what I received was a I didn't have any other cymbals but this one that was on the left. If you imagine yourself as a drummer in drummer's perspective, which means like you sit in the chair and everything, all the kit pieces are placed in front of you. You want to try to actually visualize what a drummer would do. And if you can't, then I definitely recommend watching more videos of drummers playing, because you'll find out what they would do, what they can't do, and even more importantly, what they can do. And so what I did was, whenever the drummer's left hand is free, I'm adding an extra cymbal crash at the end of every measure. For those of you who aren't sure, this is a measure. One full round of counting the top number of your time signature. Little music theory for you guys. So I mainly did that. And another thing I wanted to kind of point out is if you're doing a fill, which is just like a small unique pattern at the end of, usually, like, I'll call it a rotation, maybe like a chord progression or so, maybe every 4 measures. You can't have someone play anything but what requires 2 hands, so there was originally cymbals here, so I just left in the first one, and that sounds a little better. Again, I don't want to rewrite much of the song here, because, you know, this is a mixing tutorial, but that's kind of the dealio there. So besides that, I selected all the tracks here, and I hit H, or you can get here by hitting Edit and Humanize, and then I left the timing to be perfect, or 0% changed, but I increased the velocity change quite a bit. And I did the same for the snare with a little bit of timing, and then these, all the cymbals, which are below in my track, I changed them up so that they would be much more loose. We're looking at, you know, 9%, maybe even more, and the velocity at 10, and that allows it to really be loose. And one thing you can do in Reaper that I'm not sure if it's done the same way in other DAWs is if you select all the notes you want, and I'm right-clicking, holding it down, selecting everything, you can just click on your left mouse in the velocity area and then just drag around, you know, like paint the pattern. So things like that are what's going to get you the realistic drum sound that you seek, even if it's still robotically perfect on-time metal. This hi-hat pedal thing, this is something that was fine, but I wanted to address. Now, the sound of a hi-hat pedal, like kicking throughout, can really bring in some continuity to the kit. It can also sound really odd. If you're doing anything that requires double kick pedal or bass drum pedals, you need to not use this. Again, there's some of you listening who will probably be like, duh, you know, drummers only have 2 feet, but I have to address it because sometimes I do see it. Not here, luckily, but that's just something. Now let's take a look at what is actually going into my drum kit. I've already talked in detail about the whys and hows, so I'm just going to say what I have. So I have a compressor on the kick. I'm losing a little bit of volume here. I'm using the dry mix knob in Pro C, which is parallel compression. It just means that we can have a compressed signal and the not compressed signal. So you can get a little bit of like overflow, spillage or whatever of volume, and it kind of makes for a thicker sound. And then we have an EQ. You can use any EQ, of course, and I'm just bringing out the low end and a little bit of the clickety high end. So that's kind of cool. And I'm going to actually bring in the guitars a little just so that you can... Okay, so the snare is kind of a important factor here. So I'm basically curving off the low end and raising the high end, and I took out just a little bit of some weird frequencies here. Let's take a listen. Okay, so the EQ is kind of nice. We have a compressor here that I'm trying not to lose too much volume in, but it's happening. We don't need that. Not gonna need to. Then I have FabFilter Saturn. Any saturation plugin will do. And basically what I'm doing is in each of the bands, I'm kind of controlling some frequencies here. Basically, a saturator just fills in some distortion, and it kind of, I like to think of it as it fills in the cracks of digital recording for you with like nice fuzz. And that's what's going on there. Another thing snare related is I'm using this free plugin called Verbiage, and I'm basically using it as a reverb, you know, full wet, no dry. There's a built-in like high pass filter, kind of just a way for me to avoid having the ring at the low end take up so much. The rest of the settings are kind of standard. I made a big room, a little bit of pre-delay just to lengthen the sound. Each snare sound becomes a little longer, as you can see. And then I like making it pretty wide. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about having the leads in here yet, but that's a good it's good sound we're getting so far. The overheads, I just have an EQ to drop off the low end a little bit. And let me turn on actually some of these effects. So that's not awful. And yeah, the overheads really don't matter there. Hi-hat, we don't really use it besides the foot pedal here, so just left a fairly tight compressor on there, a little bit of slow attack, so it's a little gentler. Nothing to write home about. There's no toms used here at all in the entire song. So if I wanted to, I could probably just delete this. Luckily, there's no bleed from a sampler kit, right? So now I have a room mic coming from Superior Drummer. We're looking at this mono track, and I actually have both of these turned on. I don't like the close mic. I prefer to just use a middle. You know, less is more. And it's very compressed. I could bring that back actually a little bit, and then just speed it up. Because it's kind of just like this trashy big filter in the center. One thing I actually wouldn't mind doing is saturating it, but actually the drum kit's already pretty saturated, and I'll show you why. So this is actually receiving more of like the mono sound and midway. I made my own room kit, and that's kind of something my friend AH Music showed me. So it receives from our overheads, and then we have reverb, the reverb convolution reverb, and it's simulating this impulse response of a fairly large studio room. If we just listen to that. So it's actually pretty cool that way. And then we're compressing it. I just use Comp so it's quicker. Tight compression. There we go. So again, if you don't know if a compressor is doing anything, look here. This is how much volume is being reduced as a result of compressing it. And then, of course, we got FabFilter Saturn to bring up the brightness quite a bit. And one thing I kind of want to pause. One thing I'm trying to do here is, get the mid up. But yeah, I think that the fake room is going to bring a lot more life to this drum kit, so. And what we have here, of course, is some EQ, just little cuts here and there, making space for other stuff. Then, of course, we have some very strong parallel compression, so you get a lot of uncompressed sound. And then what else? We're trying not to lose too much dB, but it's a metal song. A lot of that is basically just cutting off a little bit of volume. We can have some fairly fast attack here, a little bit of boost afterwards to keep it level with the rest of the song. And that's pretty much in the ballpark of what's going on there with the compression. And then, of course, I got a little bit more saturation. Maybe like fill in where it's missing. So let's take a listen to this properly. So, honestly, like, I'm going to be mixing that more as we get the rock part out, but I'm okay with it. My ears are also kind of screwed up right now. Not the best thing to say during a mixing tutorial, but if anything's obviously, anything's obviously sounding bad, I blame the ears. So, okay, let's take a listen to the rhythm guitars, because those are kind of simple. Okay, so first things first, gotta kill that noise. And that's nice and clean. There is a fade out. I would definitely recommend sending stems to a mixer without it, but it's alright. Now, I don't do anything to the guitars on their own. I like to make guitar mixing as painless as possible. So let's try to carve out some nice sounds here. and allow me to explain what I did here. So we have a high pass and a low pass. And what this does, of course, is it gives you all your bass guitar space here. All this junk is, you know, it's going to be sibilance, shaky, bright, unnecessary noise. So I try not to kill too much of it, but I definitely don't need it. Especially when the cymbals and stuff are taking that spot. So, you know, again, if there's no need, then let's not bother. So now I'm just going to take some small cuts, and then that should do it. Okay, and again, I'm going to have to deal with those leads later. Now, I don't see any reason at all to use a compressor on these rhythm guitars because they're already fairly straightforward and compressed. I also don't really see the need to use too much anything. I'm going to use some saturation just because I feel like the guitar sound themselves could use some sprucing up. So let's divide it into get a little bit of that boomy, get some of the mids. I'm basically trying to make like an even picture here. And I'm liking that pretty well. So now we can look at the bass. And again, I'm going faster in this one, I apologize. So let's listen to the bass dry, just to learn. So this looks like very low-end bass, not a lot of like important characteristics up here. So I'm gonna just make a low cut or a high pass and kill off just a bit below where we need it. Gonna boost that. There's a little bit of like pick noise, or sorry, finger noise. But I'm kind of okay with just that. And then let's go to our compressor, handy dandy, and get something a little aggressive, maybe like 4-ish. Get some fairly fast attack. Even like a parallel compression thing. So we're not losing too much volume. It's just, you know, raw, dry track. And now we have my bias effects tone, which is already EQ'd and compressed pretty well. I like to think of the bias amp bass tone kind of like a coat, and that way we fill in like the outer frequencies that we couldn't get. Usually has the most high end. Same thing goes for the distorted one. Because this song is not like darkly obliterated metal, I'll put it a little lower. But what's going on is a lot of compression already, so I don't see the need to like shower it all. And if you look at an EQ on top of the bass bus itself, we can start to see where our rhythm guitars and bass play together. It's like probably here. I'm just gonna take like a few cuts. Like bring this up. The main issue here is I want there to be some strong low end, and the raw bass guitar tracks that we have here may not be giving me entirely that. So we're kind of filling in the gaps. Also, compressor would help. So let's take a look at that. Just glue the tracks together a little bit. I like it to be transparent too. See, that's what I wanted. Oh, get away. So now that we have the rhythm guitars, the bass, and the drums all blending fairly well, this section should sound pretty good. Alright, so I'm happy with that. So now I want to look at the synths. There's so many of them, and most of what I did here is, because again they're all samples pretty much, I didn't do anything special besides just volume balancing and panning. So I like the strings kind of close to center. They're naturally panned a little bit of ways. And just because of, volume problems, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my standard EQ and compress. We'll take a listen. I'm going to get rid of the low end because that's where the bass will be, but not by too much, because the bass doesn't overlap till later. Same for the high pass or low pass. Compressor, I need one. Compressor. That'll do. So the reason why I'm bringing it so low is because I'd rather have a compressed but audible signal than a way too quiet one. So again, I like this harpsichord here, the strings here, because they're at the same time. So we're creating a very strong stereo image. You don't want to have an instrument, in my opinion, sticking weirdly out in the corner with nothing on the opposite side, unless it's just momentary. So, like, listen to the organ. So these two organs are actually playing off of each other. I don't like this very harsh organ sticking out, so I'm keeping it tucked in the back also. Now listen to something like here where there's a lot of them. Or like this magic box. These two are both playing very similar parts, so it doesn't feel odd that they're stereo panned. In a way, the similar frequencies will cancel out to where they'll sound mono, so you don't feel odd hearing both. I also have the choirs panned fairly differently on each side. They don't have to be exact if the aesthetic is different. I like keeping this keyboard harp out of their way while we're all going. That way, the choirs can blend and this one won't get sucked in. Stand out a little. Bring it, like, closer. And if we listen to the full track, of course, there'll be lead guitars here. Now, I want to quickly talk about the slam. Now, these kind of things are clipping and way too loud, but in the right capacity with all these other instruments, you can make it feel like an impact, but not screw up your song. You barely notice it, but it's there. And if we hear it alone... Right. Now this one isn't a bass boom as much as it's like an orchestral metal hit and slam, kind of like a pre-made sample, but you can use it to your advantage just by making sure, And we have another one here. Let's take a listen. Now, one thing I want to do with the snare reverb is I'm going to add like a little gate. You can even find a preset, probably a snare gate. Actually, no, that's not what I want. So that way when the impact is done of the snare reverb, we can just cut it off. See, that's where it gets to be a problem, though. Maybe I won't do it. See, that's smooth. Okay. So now we get to talk about lead guitars. I tend to like the main melodies to stay closer to the center when there's so many, and have everyone else just, like, really far out. I also like... Now the playing here, it's great, but it's also fairly like heavy picked, and that can be very harsh. So we're gonna have to combat a little bit of that. So let's see how I work that. And I'm gonna use my favorite Valhalla shimmer delay, and I'm just going to bring it very low in the mix. Now notice there's a synth playing the same thing now. So I'm gonna get a lightweight EQ, and I'm gonna dull it, so that way it doesn't get in the way of the guitars. So let's get out a low pass and trim it. And this organ is also doing it to me. That's actually not too bad, but this one, however, just like a beep. And while I don't want to take it out entirely, I do want to fix it. So that sounds pretty solid. Now that we get harmonies, you really want to watch, because these are like too perfect a take, so it can get really pokey. And again, my main lead guitar here, that guy is towards the left, so I want the harmony to sit on the right. And I'm going to apply the same Valhalla with a little more liberal usage of reverb, small stereo amount. We'll keep the size the same. And I'm already going to apply some EQ because I really want to control the high end here. It's very high end heavy, and I want to avoid the tinniness but bring out the melody. So we're gonna put a low cut, see how that sounds. So, hold on, let me clean up some of these tracks. I guess we'll leave that. Okay. What do we have here? I think that might be noise. Okay. Remember, it's always important to kill your noise. You also always want to have your main melody louder than the harmony when you're intending for the main melody to carry out the song. And this is sounding much nicer as a result. And now I'm going to add a compressor, but instead of using it as like this volume boosting thing, I'm going to use it as a volume controlling thing. Like a limiter. And now we have more harmonies, so let's take a look at that. And again, we're opposite. Actually, there's no real reason to have two harmony tracks here, so I'm just gonna move it up. So remember, if there's no overlap, less tracks is probably better. Just jump you up here and stick you out. Okay, and since this one's kind of leaning here, we'll bring that extra harmony there. This track has nothing, so now this becomes harmony 2. You have taken over. Okay, I'm not sure what this was, but I might... So these might be the same takes, in which case I might just delete this one. But there's some really loud glitch. So let me just like pan this. How about something like... Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how this is balanced out, so I'm gonna start adding reverb. And I've, of course, since changed a little bit of how I do this, but essentially we've got a reverb, just like a regular plate reverb. I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna make it into like, what do we got here? Let's go to real spaces. We'll use like a studio content. And we're gonna get the drums in here, if they don't mind. And I don't think that was working. No, it was working. Actually, what we might do instead is, let's just send certain kit pieces to the reverb. Where are you? Okay. There we go. And we're also gonna send, what else? Let's send our synths. Now, some of you might ask, Ro, why are you putting reverb on this when I could just put on this? This lets you put music in the same reverb space. It's as if you were playing in the same area. The drum kit and the orc is all in the same area, and now it sounds more connected. It saves CPU power, and it gives you a chance to use higher quality reverb. Just make sure if buses aren't working, send the individual tracks. I know there's some glitches. You also definitely need this ZL and LL clicked, or else you're gonna have some latency issues. I would also not recommend recording with these. I'm also gonna send all of my lead guitar tracks here to the what I call the Craverb, which is just like a crazy reverb, a lot larger, and therefore needs a little more control. Right now it's on some Chicago mic set. We can do better. Let's get a 1800 seat. So that's sounding fine. Let's get to the See, the problem is once the rhythms and all that gets in, they're too quiet. It's definitely useful to clean up a lot of this stuff. When it's soloed out, everything becomes very obvious. So I like to clean up absolutely everything I can. Because see, it gets reflected. There we go. Okay, now I'm gonna start doing stuff that'll screw up everything. I'm gonna use some EQ, and I have a preset based off of creative live video that I watched, and this is just going to make everything brighter, so get ready for everything to have to be remixed. Oh, why didn't I think of this? Alright, let's try saturating the lead guitars a little lower, get some... Okay, so what this is really doing is it's bridging between everything. So I'm enjoying that much more. Hopefully you are too. But based on my happiness right now, I'm gonna start the next process, which is multiband compression. So let's pull out handy dandy multiband and try to kill only a little bit of volume. Tops. Hold on, I keep hearing some noise from here. Yeah, the thing with the way I mix is you really can't have too much noise because I don't gate too hard. So, just gonna clean that up. So we watched the little volume, or sorry, we watched the the volume dB lost, and basically what we're doing is making sure that the volume that hits here goes down by this ratio, and that we're not losing too much, but we don't want any boominess. This is where we fix some of the boom. We got a little bit of noise in between. I definitely recommend, I mean, not everyone wants to do this, but if you don't want to use a noise gate, then definitely trim a little bit of the tracks, like how I'm doing. Only when it interferes, of course, and this is a case where I think the noise is detrimental to the track. I hear it. I hear it. Must be in the harmony track. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to trim this a little and curve it out. So this is where palm muting comes into play. Oh. I think we have to just manually trim a lot of this. Let's see. Oh, and you can hear the boom, so let's clean it up. Just want to get that out. It's not as big a deal on the harmony track because it's not as audible. And one thing I'm going to do here is try to get rid of where it's overstepping. So I can dig that. Now we're gonna add a saturator. And let's listen to the beginning. So this part gets a little bothersome at this volume, so I'm going to do some automation, which I hate to do when a compressor can do the job, but... So let's hear how this sounds with like a... Oh, you know what? I don't even think we finished tweaking that. I'm trying to do here is construct the EQ picture with some more saturation, and I noticed that there's a lot of low end missing compared to the rest. Okay, and here's kind of how I use a limiter. I type in the value I want based on how loud it can be. I like 0.20 dBFS. That's just kind of like how do I describe it? I think it's all logarithmic, so it's very difficult to completely explain a number and then you'll be like, oh, this is a perfect number. Basically, I listen to a reference track and then I kind of figure out what volume I want it to be on. This is intersample. I think it's called protection. It's just basically a way to intersample peaks button. So it detects whenever there's a problem between two samples. It just clears it up. And then we raise the gain until we kind of get to where we want to go. This is kind of average. This is radio music right at the top. You got like jazz and traditional stuff that can range around here. I always hit like here. Okay, so in all honesty, there's plenty I'm sure someone better at mixing can do that I didn't, but I'm actually pretty happy with this. So I'm going to render this out and we'll take a full listen.